Hey, welcome to a special edition of the PHNX Sun Show. I'm Aspo. He's Gerald, and we're super excited to welcome in our special guest, Sean Highkin. He is the author and host of the Rose Garden Report newsletter and podcast. Sean, how are you, man?
Doing all right. How about you guys?
As it has been for you, it's been a crazy day here in Phoenix.
A little bit. This is just. I'll tell you guys, just to let you guys a little bit behind the curtain. I got a heads up from a couple of people about 5 minutes before the Woj tweet came out that a deal was imminent within the next 5 or 10 minutes. I was completely in the dark about Milwaukee even being in at all until it actually happened.
Yeah. We all saw that and we're like, oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You started to hear Toronto over the last week or so. I heard some chatter about like Philly, Chicago, but Milwaukee makes all the sense in the world as far as a team that wants to try to get Dame, because Giannis has been doing all these interviews this summer talking about how if they don't make a big all-in move, I might want to go somewhere else. I just didn't think that Milwaukee had the stuff.
No, I didn't think so either. I had actually put together some hypothetical trades involving DA. The Bucks were one of them, a 3-team deal. But I had thought the Suns would want Drew Holiday, and I thought the Blazers wouldn't be able to get enough in return from Milwaukee and Phoenix. I did not see that coming at all.
Well, I mean, maybe Drew still ends up. So, I mean, I'm expecting that Portland is going to move Drew in the next couple of days, because he's just, he's at a different point in his career where he's trying to play for a contender, and they're obviously that's not the position that Portland is in right now. So I would imagine that once this becomes official, something else is going to happen with that.
Yeah, I feel like we're going through the stages of grief here in Phoenix, and we're kind of trying to reach acceptance. Can you tell us a little bit? Let's start with Yusuf Nurkic. The good, the bad, whatever you got on him, try to make us feel a little bit better here in Phoenix.
I don't know how much better I'm going to be able to make you guys feel, because even like I've been hearing for like a week that the Nurk Ayton part of this was, no matter where Dame ended up, that was going to be locked in. And Gerald, you and I were talking privately a little bit and kind of seeing what we'd been hearing. But like I had been hearing for a while that part of it was going to be locked in. And I guess the way I would understand it from Phoenix's end is, you guys obviously know more about this than I do, but Deandre Ayton clearly just needs a fresh start somewhere else and needs to move on and be somewhere where he isn't always going to be the guy that they drafted instead of Luka.
Right.
And you also, if you're Phoenix, they're like the Suns roster is so top heavy, where you've got the 4 guys on the max deals and then the other 11 guys on the roster are all minimum guys. I see the logic of wanting to take Ayton's money. It's like 32, 33 million, something like that, and spread that out over 2 or 3 actual rotation guys, even if it's a little bit of a talent downgrade from Ayton as an actual talent. And Nurkic, I will say, I mean, absolutely is a downgrade in talent in that way, and he's very flawed. I'd say I'd put him, and I've always kind of put him here. I don't think he's as good as some of his, he's a very polarizing player, as you can imagine, in the Portland ecosystem. I don't think he's as bad as his detractors make him out to be. I don't think he's as good as his defenders make him out to be. I think he's basically a league average starting center.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you didn't make me feel a lot better. But what are his strengths? What I've heard is he's unbelievable at setting screens.
Yes.
Is a good rebounder and can pass, but motivation at times is a problem. Is that a good read?
Well, I'll put it this way. He spent all of last summer playing for Bosnia in the Eurobasket tournament, and then he still somehow came into camp out of shape.
Oh, geez.
So that's been, I know over the course of the season, Chauncey Billups has been pretty frustrated with that aspect of things. But, and he's also a guy like personality, like, he's not a bad guy. Nurk is a good person. He's a good guy. I like him a lot personally. I've never had an issue with him. He does get very moody sometimes when he's not getting the ball as much as he would like, or when something isn't going the way that he would like. I think that's a very real thing with him. I think, and if you want to talk about like him expanding his game, this past, I'm going to pull the numbers up here just so I have it, but this past year, he started actually shooting threes more than he than he had in the past, and he was actually, I'm pulling this up. He shot 2.3 3-point attempts per game. And they were mostly like wide open looks because nobody's guarding Yusuf Nurkic out there. But 2.3 attempts per game, which is way more than he's ever shot in a season before that. And he shot 36.1% on those attempts, which is not like elite, but that's, that's respectable. Like, you got to put someone on him at that point if you have a 7-footer who's shooting like that. But I mean, I'd say that part of it is definitely a talent downgrade. I am much more curious to see how, and the guy that I think, if you want to get really excited about somebody in in this trade coming back, the guy that I would look at as this is a guy that really, super young, still has some upside, probably needs a fresh start and a change of scenery. The guy I would look at is Nassir Little. I think that's going to be. I think that he's going to become a fan favorite pretty quickly. I think.
Okay, what can you tell us about his game? Because I know looking at the numbers, obviously, it's not going to paint the clear picture. Playing bench minutes or limited minutes his first 3 or 4 seasons in Portland.
Well, he's a dog. I'll put it that way. He mentality wise, he's going to dive on the floor, go after loose balls, that kind of stuff. He's gotten better, I think, as a shooter. He has the body to be. He's one of those guys where you look at the physical tools, you look at the body, and you can say, oh, he could be like a good good modern defensive wing, and that's kind of what they tried to do with him. It never came together for whatever reason, whether it's health, because he's had a lot of different injury stuff, and it's not anything that I think is really recurring. It's all just kind of a bunch of unrelated stuff that he was just really unlucky with. But he was also, I think it was just one of those situations where he makes a couple of defensive lapses and then Chauncey kind of pulls him and doesn't put. It's one of those things where sometimes a coach will have a short leash for a young guy, but he's talented and he works hard. And I think he's a guy that I would, I think people are going to really take to, personality wise, everything else, mentality wise, I think he's about the right things, and he's gonna. I think he's somebody that fans in Phoenix are gonna like a lot, whether he is able to have an impact or not.
I mean, is the read in Portland that obviously it's tough to see Dame go as a centerpiece there, but is the read that you guys won this deal in many ways? Because it feels like you got an immense amount of talent, another move to make with Drew. And the look from a Suns perspective is a lot of people feel like they lost this deal.
I would say, I mean, just from the standpoint of, if there's a way to and you guys know a lot more about the internal, the dynamics with the Suns and what their needs were in the organization than I do, because you guys, follow them on a day-to-day basis a lot more than I do. I understand this from the Suns' perspective, just in terms of wanting to take Ayton's money and get, 2 or 3 actual rotation guys who aren't just veteran minimum guys that you're trying to talk yourselves into to go with KD, Wook, and Bradley Beal. But from a talent standpoint, I would say that the Suns definitely were not the team that got the better end of this deal. But as far as who won the deal, Milwaukee won the deal because they got Dame. Right. Dame and Giannis together. I don't know how anybody in the league is going to guard that. I now instantly think Milwaukee is the favorites to win the title. That's a pretty league changing thing there. As far as from Portland's end, they have been trying to what you'll say, I guess, from their end, they've been trying to upgrade the starting center spot for a while. And I think with DeAndre Ayton, they were able to do that. I don't really know too much about Toumani Camara, but that's just it seems like that's kind of a throw in. And then whatever they do with Drew Holiday, I would imagine there's going to be contenders lining up out the door to get him, because that's the kind of guy that if you're trying to, go deep in the playoffs, that's a guy that's done that before and has been, had some very important moments in that title run that the Bucks had. So it's hard to say. I understand we kind of always have to do this whole, who won, who lost the deal. I think it's going to be hard to say that from Portland's perspective until you see what happens with the Drew trade. Right. But I do think DeAndre Ayton, taking a young athletic big that you can put next to Scoot, I think that's going to be good for Scoot. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to turn the franchise over to Scoot post Dame, I can see the idea of why that would be appealing there. And Ayton is somebody I know that Portland has kicked the tires on in the past. I know they were interested in him last offseason after the way that the Dallas series went, and it seemed like Ayton was just going to be on the way out. And Phoenix, I know that was something that they poked around with, but it was just too hard to make the money work with the sign and trade stuff. So it's a player that they've had interest in the past, and I'm just really curious. So you guys, again, will probably have more insight into why it didn't work in Phoenix and, what he might need at his next spot. You guys are going to know more about that than I will, but I'm curious to see how that works with him with a change of scenery.
I'll tell you this. A lot of what you said about Yusuf Nurkic is exactly what people said in Phoenix about DeAndre Ayton. So just some of the motor stuff, some of the wanting the ball and upset if he's not. But I think with him as what appears to be probably the second option there to Scoot, I think you're going to like what you see because I think he's going to get more touches. He'll go through lapses there, but I think you'll like him for what you got there.
And they're also not going to be trying to contend next year. That's the thing. So it's like if he needs to work through some of that stuff, it's not like some of these situations, like this Phoenix team, like ever since they traded for Chris Paul, their whole thing has been, we have to be title contenders now. And then they made the finals the one year and had the best record in the league the next year and then trade for Kevin Durant. And now any of DeAndre Ayton's flaws and shortcomings are going to be magnified. He's going to be in a little bit of a different situation in Portland, I would think.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to, as much as we've been frustrated at times with DA's play on the court and lapses out here, we're definitely looking forward to seeing how he does in a rebuild situation where he's afforded some of those developmental opportunities that maybe out here just didn't have the time or the patience for.
And it also just seems like that I think just from the thing I said earlier, and you guys can tell me about whether this is really still something people talk about, but it feels to me, just looking at it from the outside, that no matter what he does in Phoenix, he's always going to be the guy that they drafted instead of Luka, and that's always going to be a thing that, like, a perception that kind of follows him around, and that is something that if he gets somewhere else where that stigma and that that history and that baggage is not there, maybe that's something that's going to be better for him. The other part of it too, and this is something that you've kind of seen happen at a lower level, because the guy I'm about to bring up here is not a former number 1 overall pick with nearly the amount of talent or upside that DeAndre Ayton theoretically you'd think would have. But you look at what happened with Matisse Thybulle in Philadelphia under Doc Rivers, where it just, it was pretty clear that Doc just did not trust him at all, and his confidence was completely shot, and he was in and out of the rotation, and he was seen as kind of a distressed asset. And then when Portland added him, he started actually knocking down threes, and he talked about how, like, Chauncey Billups kind of empowered him to play more freely and wanted to get the most out of him, and he felt more confident, and he felt more appreciated. And I wonder if I know that Chris Paul and Monty Williams are both gone in Phoenix, but I wonder if just there was still too much baggage there that with the organization, with DA, that it was just that type of stuff was never going to be able to fully get past, even though the coach is gone and it's, a different team. I wonder if that's the kind of thing where maybe just getting to a different place where those expectations and that baggage is not there from when you were the number 1 overall pick of that franchise is maybe going to be good for him. That's just my own outside thought. You guys know the guy from a personality standpoint better than I do, so that's just my own thought from the outside, though.
I think you're spot on with that. I think a fresh start is definitely what he needs. I think that perspective and knowing that Portland wanted him. This is a guy that very much wants to know that he belongs, that he's part of something, and that he's wanted by a coaching staff, by a front office, by a fan base. I think that will do a world of wonder for him. Last one for you, Sean. You said Nassir Little is a dog that fans are going to fall in love with him. But do you truly believe on a championship team he's a rotation guy?
I mean, what do we mean by rotation guy?
Top 9 guy. That
sure, yeah, top 9 guy. Yeah, I think. I mean, when you look at some of the guys that they signed, like you're counting on a lot of veteran minimum guys. I think he's better than a veteran minimum guy. The problem with him has always been being able to stay on the floor consistently. And again, it's not like, oh, he tore an ACL and that's something that's dealing with him. Like he had, a fractured elbow, or he had like a shoulder injury, or then he had like the same ab thing. This is all like that Dame had. It's all like unrelated stuff. He's just been super unlucky. Like he had one season that was completely taken out because he caught COVID. Like this was like pre-vaccine, so this was like 2020. So it was like he got like the really bad version of COVID, where before anybody was vaccinated, and like that took him out for a few months. He's just been super unlucky with all that type of stuff throughout his career. And if he can stay healthy, I think he can be a good rotation player. Yes, and he's also, and this is going to be very important for a team in Phoenix's situation where you're paying Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker what you're paying those guys. Nas is on a 4-year, $28 million extension that's about to kick in. So you've got a guy who has been in the league enough that he's not on a rookie deal and is totally inexperienced, on enough of a cost-controlled contract that you're going to get it's a little bit better than some of those veteran minimum guys that are out there. And I think that's going to be a good situation for him. And if you wanted, speaking of that contract, if you want an idea of the type of guy that Nas is and like what and I actually know Nas quite well. He's probably one of the guys that I knew the best on the team. If you want some idea of how he approaches this stuff and what, his attitude is towards this stuff, when he signed that extension, again, 4 years, $28 million, that's a lot lower of a number than normally a rookie scale extension guy would get. Like at that point, you might as well just go into free, restricted free agency, see if you can get a better offer sheet, or, quote unquote, bet on yourself. When he signed that extension, we asked him why he didn't bet on himself. And he said, look, $28 million is a lot more money than I've ever seen in my life. I'm just going to lock that in now and not just try to get like, that's like the type of, that's the way he looks at the world, and the way that there's kind of his mind. He's a really smart and thoughtful guy. And I would like to see him be successful wherever he ends up.
Well, he is Sean Highkin. You can follow him at Highkin. And if you want to follow along with Deandre Ayton's journey in Portland, I highly recommend that you subscribe to his podcast, Rose Garden Report, and check out his newsletter of the same name. Sean, thank you so much for your insight and really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.